Hi, Section 14. Here we are again. Your second video of week 4 already, February 1st. Tomorrow's Groundhog Day. We're halfway through winter. It's going to be cold tomorrow night in my northern kingdom, below 20 below. So take it easy, be safe, and know that next week it's going to be much nicer. We're going to be in the 30s and climb out of it, I bet, for the rest of the month. And if it's February 1st, it means I'm only 24 days away from my next Verse Like Water poetry event. Giving you a little bit of a different background, trying to mix things up. My lighting is not perfect. I'm no good at controlling those yet. I better learn about that before tomorrow at the very latest. I'll learn how to control the lighting. I'm in my favorite place, my glass porch, in my home here in my 20-acre peat bog, lakeside peat bog. I've got my favorite shirt on, my favorite green Pendleton, anyway, solid wool, and I'm doing my favorite thing right now, which is kind of teaching a class, trying. Doing my best, and you deserve some different backgrounds. Maybe in the spring. It's kind of weird because I do Comp 1 always in the fall, so everything's unspooling sort of in reverse, and it's kind of hard to keep it straight. But maybe I'll do a front porch video. Maybe we'll do a fireside chat with my wood stove, which is kind of petering out right now. I wish it would get going. It's cold in here. And we definitely are going to do my farewell video for you will be off of the junkiest, most beloved pontoon in the state of Minnesota. It's tiny. It's too soon to talk about pontoons. I visit it sometimes. I'm so lonesome for it. So here's what I have for you today. I have a beautiful poem for you by a friend of mine named Szybist, and it's getting to be a while since I hosted her. And I've picked up this book that won a National Book Award so many times it's kind of a little bit beat up. And I want to tell you a thing about her and something very special about this poem that I want to read to you. Excuse me. I'll also tell you the same story that I told my crew up in Staples Motley today. And it's a story, excuse me, it's a story I've been telling forever. I've been telling it since it happened. Sometimes I have news stories all the time, but there are stories that serve a purpose. They're illustrative, right? They help people understand stuff. And I'm a storyteller more than a lecturer. That's how I orient myself. And I cannot believe I've found a way to make a living with stories, telling stories, getting people interested in stories. And we're all thirsty for them. I haven't met very many students that didn't care for a good story. So I got one for you. And the good news is it'll help you understand something about rhetoric. Also, let me have a sip of water. Also, I want to talk today about rhetorical arrangement. We've talked about invention already. I've mentioned to you already that rhetoric has 5 houses: invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. I can deal with invention in one day. I can deal with arrangement probably in one day. And I probably have to tell you that style, the 3rd house, whoa, I love studying that and thinking about it. That's going to be more than one lesson, believe me. It's one of the most delightful things in the world to study in an English class. Most English teachers won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. That's my day for you. So Szybist is a professor, like I said, at Lewis and Clark. And what's fascinating to me about her is that she likes to write poems that are, here's our word of the day. And this is a real interest in mine. There's a Greek word called ekphrasia. And the word that sticks in my head regarding it is the word ekphrastic. You've never heard that word before, and you may never hear it again. But an ekphrastic poem is a poem that's inspired by a painting. A poet looks at a painting, and then they write about it. And this book, Incarnadine, is an entire collection of ekphrastic poems. Who is this painter? Based on a painting by Sandro Botticelli. That's it. And the painting is simply called The Annunciation. And each poem is an imagining of what it was like for Mary when the angel Gabriel came to tell her, hey, are you up for a project? Like being mother to the Son of God. Now, one of the most interesting things I've seen in all my years of hosting poets is that, and reading poetry, that's all I do at night is read poetry, mainly out here. Got a few of my books behind. Different background? No, it's just more books, right? I've observed in the years that some of the most beautiful poems that have religious themes are written by straightforward atheists or agnostics. And that's the story here. Szybist is not a believer, although she's married to one. She's married to a guy who's a Roman Catholic, just like me, and she goes to Mass with him once in a while. But she doesn't. She doesn't believe. She just thinks we're kind of here on our own. And there's also more background here. Her name is Mary, which means she identifies with Mary. And I'm sorry to report to you that she and her husband they're not able to have children for goodness knows what reason. That's heartbreaking for some couples, and it sure was heartbreaking for her. And that happens sometimes. And each poem is an imagining of the Annunciation. I think I said that. This poem's got a fantastic premise. Girls overheard while assembling a puzzle. Are you sure this blue is the same as the blue over there? This wall's like the bottom of a pool. Its color, I mean. I need a darker two-piece this summer, the kind with elastic at the waist, so it actually fits. I can't find her hands. Where does this gold go? It's like the angels giving her a little piece of honeycomb to eat. I don't see why God just doesn't come down here and kiss her himself. This is the red of that lipstick we saw at the mall. This piece of her neck could fit into the light part of the sky. I think this is a piece of water. What kind of queen? You mean right here? And we were supposed to believe she can suddenly talk angel? Who thought this stuff up? I wish I had a velvet bikini. That flower's the color of the veins in my grandmother's hands. I wish we could walk into that garden and pick an X-ray to float on. Yeah, I do too. I'd say a zillion yeses to anyone for that. Gosh, she was kind. And also, she had, it doesn't always happen. Some people get great voices, right? Like spoken voices, or, you know. She has one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. It's just like silk. And some poets are not blessed with that. They're great poets, but they don't sound so great when they read their work. Okay, a couple stories for you today, and I hope they explain what I'm trying to communicate to you. Let's go way back. Okay, I know I start a lot of stories with when I was a boy, when I was young. Way back in 1990. I was just getting going at St. John's Prep School, and I'd had a couple teaching gigs before that. Middle school, I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in Little Falls in the 80s. And I wasn't so great at that, and just sort of moved on up the line, I guess, right? But in 1990, I was beginning at St. John's Prep School, and I had a section of AP English, and I had 3 sections of English 10. And I was just coming off some years of really getting interested in classical rhetorical theory. And the whole business with the triangle, the voice making an appeal to an audience about a subject, we've talked about this, the idea that there's an ethos swirling around the voice, around the constituent part of the other deal, around the audience, that's pathos, emotional appeal. And then there's a logic-centered appeal, a rational appeal that centers on the subject. So I remember very clearly, I taught this one day, and I got out to my car, and I thought, I had kind of a disingenuous thought. I can remember the thought because I thought it was funny. I was driving home, and I thought to myself, I feel like I just did a card trick in front of a dog. Or to put it another way, I had just put very abstract theories before a bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds, kind of like I'm doing all day long for almost 4 decades now. So what happened is, and I'm looking up here to check my time. I got in my truck, Volkswagen Super Beetle, let's tell the story true, 1973, gosh, I missed that car. I drove home thinking, I've got to make this real for them somehow. How can I make this real? So my 30-year-old brain cooked up a little assignment. I've been talking about this for a long time. Dead simple. Next day I went into class and I said, okay, on Friday, we're going to go into the computer lab and we're going to produce some writing that's not for me. Part of this was about letting them know in school, in the world of school, you mainly write for teachers, right? Like those last 27 journal entries that you put up, that I moved through and left recordings for. Go click on those if you want to hear what I really think of you. We write for teachers, mainly. You can write for a student, for each other sometimes, but in the world of school, we write for our teachers. And so I cooked up this, what I thought would be like this real world assignment, and I told them this, come on Friday, I'm going to provide envelopes, and I want you to pick out a Fortune 500 company whose products you've purchased. It says in Aristotle's Rhetoric, Book 1, everything begins with praise or blame. So I let them know. You can write a letter of compliment to a company, tell them how much you enjoyed one of their products, or if you want, you can write a letter of complaint. I even gave them a little 4-paragraph structure. Introduce yourself. Salutations are important. You greet someone. That's an old story with letters. Then tell them your history with the company. Tell them what you liked or disliked about the product. And when you get done, for the final paragraph, it won't even take 20, 25 minutes. If you like the product, thank the company. And if not, well, kind of let them know that you're unhappy, maybe dissatisfied, and maybe hint that they should do something to make you feel better about yourself. It is, after all, America. And I was teaching at Staples Motley, and I asked this kid today on live Zoom, I said, CJ, does this sound like a reasonable assignment to you? He was like, yeah, sounds great. And so unoriginal. I bet most of the 60, 70,000 English teachers that we have in this country have done the same thing. And maybe to you it sounds like a good idea. So we show up, and we get going. And IBM XTs, right? Like green screen computers with program and data disks, and they start tapping away, clacking, clacking, clacking. And I still know some of these people. I'm still friends with some of them. And in particular, I'm friends with this kid who spoke up at dawn. And I'm not a morning person. It's like 8 o'clock, I'm just bleary. And this 16-year-old kid from North Dakota named Scott Safer said, Johnson, do we need to tell the truth? And I should have said yes, but I didn't. I also didn't say no. Because I was just coming off some years in graduate school, I was suffering from something. And if any of you go off to graduate school, you better get ready, because for 2 or 3 years after grad school, you're not going to sound or write like a real human being, because grad school makes you sound, it's really pretentious. It's horrible. It harms you for a little while. But with my grad student brain, to Scott, I said this. I said, Scott, I think you should tell the truth to the extent that your ethos is comfortable with it. And I just turned around and started doing something else. I can't prove that what happened next happened. This might be the apocryphal part of the story. But I have a feeling that what happened next, what was enacted, was the telephone game. You all know how that works. And I'm just imagining now, but something like this happened, because this turned into a disaster. Second kid said to Scott Safer, imagining, dreaming, looking back across all these beautiful years I've had the privilege to be a teacher. What did Johnson say? I think Scott Safer turned and said, he says that we should tell the truth to the extent that our ethos is comfortable with it. And, partway through the room, they were set up in a circle around the classroom so I could stand in the room and make sure they were on task. I can't believe I used language like that once upon a time. So, it goes down the line, and probably some kid in the middle, this is the way I always tell it. It's kind of funny. One kid in the middle might have said, what did Johnson say? What does this teacher want? I think that kid that he asked might have said, I don't know, something about Agos and waffles and syrup. That's a breakfast thing. I'm pretty certain that when the very last kid, 3 classes by the way, about 60 kids, when the very last kid said, what did Johnson say to that question? I think that kid said, Johnson says we can lie. Johnson says we can lie all day long. Let's lie. And you guys, they did. They started clacking away, and they started telling whoppers about products, some of them that they had and bought, and some of them were just lying, okay? Some of them were just pretending that they had gotten the product. Another mistake I made, again, I'm 30. I don't know what the heck is going on. I didn't read one of those letters. I didn't want all that glue taste in my mouth. I just had them seal up the letters, and I gave them to the secretary, and I said, cover this for me. Charge it to English, please. And I didn't think another thing about it, because teachers are always thinking about what's next. We're obsessed with the future. And I was on to the next thing. So that's when the trouble begins. And I'll pause here and give you a little bit of a background. We're going to talk more about this in my next video. In 5th century Athens, there were 2 schools of rhetoric. One was Socratic, led by Socrates. One was Sophistic, led by a whole bunch of genius teachers that I shouldn't vilify as much as I do every year. In the Socratic school, Socrates emphasized truth-telling. He told his students, tell the truth no matter what. Seek the truth no matter what. Even if you get killed over it, even if you have to suffer. Sophists, they were very different. They were like, you know what? The truth is relative. And I hate that word. I hate that concept. The sophists taught, you know what? Do whatever you need to win. If you have to lie, lie. Cheat, cheat. Flatter, flatter. If you have to withhold the truth, distort it, obfuscate it, what matters is winning. And back then, I guess there must have been a sophist in me, because I sent all these letters, and at first, when we started getting responses, I don't think I acted. I regret it, but I got the story, right? And I learned. So I'll give you quick examples. And this was about acting on the world. I'm not going to stop repeating that. The study of rhetoric is the study of action, human action. We act on the world, and the world acts on us. It never ends. And here's what happened pretty quickly. About a week went by, and this kid, I'm sorry, this delightful kid, I forget what African country he's from, but I remember his name, and I can still see his smile. Mufaro comes in with this Hershey's Kiss that was the size of his head. And I went, whoa, what the heck? Where'd you get that? Well, he told me that he wrote the Hershey's company and told them that he had gotten a Hershey's candy bar that was kind of chalky and weird. Well, they forked over a Hershey's Kiss so big, he's probably still eating it. Real quickly, too, soccer players. That was back before the peso crashed. And so my high school had a lot of wonderful students from Mexico. And boy, they wrote Adidas, they wrote Umbro, and they told huge whoppers. One kid said that he went out on the field, kicked a brand new soccer ball, and it popped. They sent him a new ball, no sales slip. This kid named Guillermo, who went on to play professional soccer in Mexico, he told the Adidas company that he got these really beautiful kangaroo spikes, kangaroo skin spikes, and he went out on the field and they tore. And again, no sales slip. He just sent the shoe size. He got a brand new set of spikes. And this one kid named Pat Ingebrigtsen from Boston, Minnesota, I think. I can still see this kid's face. I called him Guitar Brother because he played guitar, and so do I. Still, I play guitar. And he really went for it. He didn't just write one guitar string company to tell him about tarnished strings. He wrote like 10, maybe 15. He just kept changing the heading, and because he wanted guitar strings. This is when the nightmare kind of began for me, because it seemed like every day Pat Ingebrigtsen was coming in with a new set of guitar strings. Johnson, Diodario, Johnson, JHS Boomer, Fender, Gibson, Ernie Ball. And I'm like, okay, this is starting to not feel so good. And they're getting the wrong idea, right? Their idea that they got with their kid brains was, Johnson's awesome. Johnson is teaching us rhetoric. And rhetoric is getting us free stuff from America because cash, coupons, merchandise is just pouring in. And I'll tell you where it got real bad. This is where I landed in the principal's office, Father Ian's principal's office. Ian Dahmer, he's still around, still doing great. There was a woman in that room, a young woman named Deb Keemer. And across the room, there was a boy who could not tear his gaze from her face because Jay Bemler was falling in love. And they got married, and they've got beautiful children. They're both PhDs. But long before this happened, long before they got married, fell in love, had a bunch of children, before she became a chemist and he became a medical doctor, Deb Keemer wrote the Little Debbie Snack Cake Company, which is owned by the McGee Baking Company in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She wrote the company, and she said, okay, she pretended to be her mom, right? She wrote and said, you know, my name is Mrs. Deb Keemer. I live in St. Cloud, Minnesota. We love your products. I sure wish I had a copy of this. We love your products. She kind of conjured this image of a pantry that was just stuffed with every possible Little Debbie snack cake product imaginable, like the Library of Congress, as I always call it, of Little Debbie snack cakes. She also reported that her daughter one evening, Deb, came running into the kitchen and she was super hungry. Well, Mrs. Keemer, the fake Mrs. Keemer, was so busy making dinner that she didn't really notice as she opened up the snack cake to give it to her daughter Deb, that the snack cake had a toxic mold on it, okay? A toxic mold, and she gave it to her daughter, trying to adjust my lighting here. That doesn't help much. She gave it to her daughter, and her daughter went into the living room and had an allergic reaction and a seizure. She was like a grand mal seizure on the carpet. She reported further to the company that she and her husband had to take Deb to the emergency room at the St. Cloud Hospital. Oh, and by the way, McGee Baking Company, she told them, we are very seriously considering litigation. We are assembling lawyers for a lawsuit against your company. This is where it just gets bad, like prison bad. Pretty quickly after that letter landed there in Chattanooga, Tennessee, this happened. The McGee Baking Company dispatched a representative from Maple Grove, Minnesota. Now, Maple Grove's not that far from St. Cloud. It's probably an hour, maybe 45 minutes. But that guy, I imagine him with an attaché case and sunglasses, right? Without calling, without writing them, he just got in his car and headed to St. Cloud. And he found the house, pre-iPhone days. He knocked on the door where the real Mrs. Keemer answered. And she said, can I help you? And he said, I am so very sorry about the snack cake that sickened and harmed your daughter. My name is such and such. I represent the McGee Snack Cake Company, which is runs Little Debbie snack cakes. My company has the hope that you'll invite me in, and we can sit in your living room or your kitchen table and start talking about ways that we can compensate your family in a serious way, and try to keep this out of the courts. I've got a checkbook with me, right? So this is trouble. I've over-taught something. My students overdid it, and a company overreacted. And I was kind of in a bad spot, mainly because these kids were getting the wrong idea. And I had to apologize to Mrs. Keemer. She's still mad at me. I see her once in a while around St. Cloud. If I like go to the mall or something, she won't even talk to me. She's still mad. Father Ian forgave me. And I called that company guy, I called that rep, and I apologized. And what are the takeaways? Well, the takeaways are they were young and they just hammered on pathos, because that's what young people want to go for. That's the button they're going to push, the emotional button. I'm guilting you because you gave me a product that I didn't like and it didn't work out and I feel ripped off. And what are you going to do about it, right? That's a total guilt move. There was no logic was thrown out in the snow. Okay, they didn't need any reasoning whatsoever. They just went on emotional rants. And yeah, it's PR and stuff. But those companies really responded, because I was teaching them how to be good writers. And they also pretended to be something that they weren't. They chose new ethoses. It wasn't good enough to be a kid. They became doctors, lawyers, factory workers. They created personas that hid who they were. And I'm gonna hold off on arrangement today, talking about arrangement, because I'm at 23 minutes, and I got to work on keeping these as succinct as possible. The takeaway is this, I think. I'm no longer that sophist. We all have an inner sophist. The world would be a better place if we all ascribed and enrolled in the school of Socrates and told the truth no matter what. We bear, as human beings, awesome responsibilities to use language well, to write and speak and think with words, with language, in ways that we could call virtuous. And there's that word again that I love so much that's Greek, arete, which means excellence. We've all got to do that. And we all know that the world has never been more full of absolute, straightforward, unrepentant liars. Pants on fire, Pinocchio nose growing liars. And let's not count ourselves among them. Let's be good. Let's be good people with language. 24 minutes. I can cut this and we'll get to arrangement tomorrow with your third video of the week. Maybe I'll make that a fireside video. We'll see how it goes. And anyway, I'll show you more of my books. I have hundreds and hundreds of poetry books. And if you just said, who cares? I love you anyway. God bless you, Section 14.